the government has a slam dunk case, I think. And he's in a lot of trouble. His guidelines are life.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your board-certified criminal defense lawyer, here to give you a breakdown of the P Diddy case. P Diddler, I can't believe I'm in the hot seat. Diddler. Before we get to that, this is brought to you by our sponsor, as AskALawyer.com. AskALawyer.com is a really good way for you to get legal advice at $49 to talk to an actual lawyer. They can disabuse you of a notion or tell you the next steps. Whatever you need to do, you go to AskALawyer.com. They also have an AI component, so if you want to do your own legal research, they're trained in all the 50 nifty United States and the federal statutes. So if you want to go to AskALawyer.com, they are very loyal, same people that brought you e-sign and e-forms. So AskALawyer.com. All right, lot to unpack here. So Cassie Ventura has been on the stand for a better part of a week. The government made their opening pitch. These are really powerful cases. What makes this a federal case is that somebody brought somebody over state lines, and then a crime was committed. So it's spaced with interstate commerce. He's charged with one count of racketeering conspiracy, and I've never seen anybody charged with a racketeering conspiracy where they're the only person that's charged. To have a conspiracy, you have to have what? Conspirators. Conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people in an act in furtherance of the conspiracy, an overt act. So you can't conspire with yourself. Where are all the other people that have conspired? So he's charged with one count of racketeering, one count of sex trafficking, and one count of transportation to engage in prostitution. They played the video, and we'll show you the video here in a second. So now, if you remember, Cassie Ventura and Sean Puffy Daddy, Puff Diddler, the Diddler, were at a hotel, and all kinds of stuff was going on, and she tried to leave. This is the quintessential thing about sex trafficking. Now just watch this. This is the elevators. Prosecutors in the Diddy Combs sex trial have released surveillance videos showing Combs physically assaulting the then girlfriend. So let's watch this. She doesn't even have shoes on yet. She's trying to put her shoes on here. She hasn't even had a chance to hit the elevator button. There she did. She hits it and she's trying to leave. Well, this is a 16-minute video. That does not look like consensual to me. Does it to you? And then she was asked, why were you just laying there? Because I didn't want to get hurt anymore. It's just disturbing when you watch this. And here he is in a fucking towel. Now here's the problem that Sean Puff Daddy, he doesn't have any argument against this. Except for that he just lost his shit. I'm really sorry. And he already apologized for it on his video. You remember that? Now he's not touching her because she's on the phone. You can see him in the mirror back there, what he's doing. Big man taking her phone. Big man. Big man putting his hand on a woman. The problem is that when you watch this, you can't, and see how it's quiet right now? You can hear a pin drop when you put this in a courtroom. And it's powerful stuff. You can't argue against this. Now, one could argue, well, this is just a domestic dispute between two consenting adults. But when she testified about a bigger, more pervasive form of abuse over an extended period of time. I haven't seen this video. I don't think there's any sound to this. Too bad there's no sound. Oh. This isn't the same one. So he doesn't drag her all the way back to the room? I've only seen like parts of it, but she actually walks back with him.
Yeah, correct. I think this got released a handful of years ago. I think it was. Yeah, I remember seeing it, having kind of the same thought of it. But I mean, sad that's like domestic abuse.
So, okay, so we're watching this video, and she walks back to the hotel room with him, right? So they're gonna make it like this was a dispute between the two, and yeah, he got a little rough with her, but she eventually came over to his room and blah blah blah. But one of the overarching themes of the government's case is that there's control. You know, that control by Sean Diddy Combs was exerted in a number of ways: physically, emotionally, financially, in every way possible. The defense is going to say this was a domestic dispute that's really probably a misdemeanor, and then she eventually, on her own free will, went back to the room with him. But you know as well as I do that the price that she'd have to pay is far worse if she doesn't comply than if she, you know, and that's what happens with these women who are in these really abusive relationships. You know, they don't feel like they have a choice. So here's what happens with the government in this case. The government basically just has her tell her story, right? And this isn't just about, you know, being raped by Diddy. It's not. It's about sex trafficking, you know, and she's having constant UTIs. She's having, and she's constantly being peed on and all this other disgusting shit. And her kids were in the courtroom, or his kids were in the courtroom. And they left because it was so disgusting. I mean, she wasn't consenting to, she was probably agreeing to it in the moment because she was having what they call cognitive dissonance. You know, what do I do if I don't do? I'm going to do this, but I don't want to do this. The punishment for not obeying the king, as he wanted to be called, is retribution for her career, you know. And then it came out on a direct examination that she did receive $20 million. He paid her $20 million to settle that lawsuit. Remember, that settled the day she filed that fucking lawsuit. It got settled for $20 million. We didn't know that until she testified. So then you have to chisel away at her credibility if you can, if you're the defense lawyer. That's what you have to do next. And so did they just chisel it away? I mean, what's her motivation to lie now? I don't hate him, she said. You know, I don't, but I you know, this is what happened. You know, I mean, she's not trying to get any money now because she already got her money. She already got paid. They were talking about drug use, you know, and I don't think it helps that she's on the stand, you know, pregnant. That doesn't help Diddy at all. But then if you look at Diddy, you know, in the pictures that have been drawn, he's all gray. Why is he all gray? Because they don't let you dye your hair in prison. So let's just kind of go over what's happening in the last few days of the trial. I mean, being on the stand for that long is grueling. And she's 8 months pregnant. The prosecutor is worried that they're going to have a mistrial if she has the kid while she's on the stand. Very stressful, can affect a pregnancy. So they're going over some text messages. And, you know, she saved all these text messages. And they played some recordings of Combs in court. But some of the things, when you get fucked up the wrong way, you always want to show me that you have the power and knock me around. I'm not a rag doll. I'm someone's child. That was her testimony. That's her testimony. And what do you have to have for, you know, for sex trafficking part of this? Force, fraud, or coercion. And I think you have all three here. The text was just sent days after the Intercontinental altercation. That's the one I just showed you. And then over the next several days, I'm so horny for you, Combs texted Ventura, which she replied, "You are? Why? What made you feel that way?" You know, she thought it was a little strange. You know, that can happen when a guy just wants to, you know, try to get back in your graces and show you that, oh, hey, I just really love you anyway. You know, I'm, you know, not apologizing for what happened, but, you know, and some guys freak out. I can't have you, but I don't want anybody else to have you. They have a woman lawyer heading the team for Diddy right now on this cross-examination of Cassie Ventura. Her name is Anna Estaveo, and which is smart, I think. You put a soft woman's touch on it, but nothing can soften really what's already in the room. You remember when Combs thought you were dancing with Chris Brown, she asked? I do, but I was not. I wasn't dancing with Chris Brown. And you thought he was upset, didn't you? He was upset when he suspected you of cheating, right? I don't know. I don't know. I would call it cheating at that point. When you are arguing about this depraved stuff, you're in a hole because there's no argument to say that somebody didn't do this. The lawyers have to tread a very thin line here because on the one hand, you've got somebody who's really sympathetic, this Cassie Ventura. That video, you know, and then the comments about control and the text messages and audio recordings that she still has to this day, that is indicative of somebody who's being controlled. You go after that person hard, the same way that Diddy went after her hard, figuratively speaking, you're going to risk alienating the jury. Now, here's the other thing. There's a big question about whether Diddy's going to testify or not. Everybody thinks, no way, no. Fuck that. He has to testify. He absolutely has to testify. Why does he have to testify? He has to testify because this is a case where you're hearing one side of the story. And guess what happens if he doesn't testify? You hear one side of the story. Are they going to get other witnesses for the defense to get up and say, no, I saw Cassie and Cassie was doing everything voluntarily? You know, I mean, they got the one guy who was peeing in her mouth, and it's like, you know, and she was constantly having UTIs, and she was constantly having, you know, cold sores in her fucking mouth, and who knows what else. I mean, maybe a once-off, but on a regular basis like this, who the fuck would subject themselves to this? Nobody. Your average person certainly doesn't. And guess who's on the jury? Your average person. These aren't celebrities on the jury. This is ma and pa kettle, you know, in all different parts of New York, and not just in New York City. You know, it's a federal case, so they take them from all over the state. So the question is, you know, when they have this amount of evidence, you know, they raided 2 of his homes, right? And they got terabytes and terabytes of videos of these freak-offs and stuff, right? So how much are they going to expose the jury to? I mean, there's all kinds of information about semen here, semen there, semen everywhere, you know? And I don't think they call it semen, but... And so how much do they actually show the jury? They will show them some, I would suspect, but put everything into evidence. Okay, this is a video from such and such date. Does it accurately represent what happened on that date? And this was a video of a freak-off party, blah, blah, blah. And are you in this video? Yeah. And what are you doing in this video? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to play from here to here. That goes back with the jury. The jury will have their own, should have their own equipment. It used to be that if you had to come back in the courtroom to play an exhibit like that. But the jury will be able to play that back in the jury deliberation room, and it becomes an exhibit. And so they won't play, they're not going to play everything because that would just take way too fucking long. But what they will do is they'll play snippets here and there. So here's a couple of things that are coming up here. An anonymous woman named Jane, who started working for Combs in 2020, is slated to tell the jury about how she was expected to have sex with escorts without a condom against her wishes. That's what the prosecutor said in their opening. She will describe a horrific night when Combs viciously attacked her, punched her in the face while she was curled up in a ball, and slapped her so hard she fell over. That's what they said in their opening. Another victim, Mia, who worked for Combs as his personal assistant for several years, will testify about being forced to perform oral sex on Combs and being raped by him, according to prosecutors. Other witnesses slated to testify are male sex workers who participated in Combs' freak-off sex romps and former employees of his companies. Now, these things happened across state lines, so they affected interstate commerce. That is one of the hallmarks of the racketeering count, and in the sex trafficking count too. And it's where you have force, fraud, or coercion. That's on the sex trafficking. And if you look at some of these pictures of Combs, you know, he's been sitting in a jail for a long time. He's grayed up because they don't let him dye his hair. He's got a sweater on. They're softening his image. You know, I mean, all that stuff is carefully choreographed. You know that, right? And you're going to hear not just from Cassie. And here's the thing. Cassie's corroborated. She's corroborated by other people and by video evidence. You know, when you see Combs drag her on the floor and smack her around, that's who he is. You can't make that shit up. So did she get $20 million? She got $20 million. Why would she lie now about it? She's got nothing to gain by doing this. I think she's just telling her story. And when you look at this from 30,000 feet, where you've got a guy who's worth $1 billion, who had Sky Vodka among all kinds of other endorsements and record deals and all this kind of stuff, had the world by the ass, but couldn't handle the ass that he wanted. You know, I mean, he just had to have depravity. He had to have power. And none of it's about sex, by the way. This is all about, I'm the fucking king. It's like Caligula. I mean, honestly, this is me. I have control over you and you and you. Minions, do your business. You know, that's essentially what he's doing here. Let's just go over a couple other things that were testified to. Ventura accused Combs of lying to her about his relationship with a mysterious woman identified as Gina after finding a photo of him with her. So, I just don't trust you anymore, she wrote. The last shot put the nail in the coffin. I can't get a chance to make things right, he messaged Ventura. It seems like you're blaming everything on me. I haven't taken care of you, ? You took care of me materialistically, not when I needed it. You know, here's the thing. Women want a guy with money. They do. but not at the expense of love. Honestly, people don't want to be abused. I need you to love me and put me first. Doesn't that say it all? And despite all this, she says, no, I don't hate him. She probably was madly in love with the guy. And then who would let other people fuck your woman? So a couple other fine points. First of all, this is not televised. Why isn't it televised? Because the federal court, they don't allow cameras in the courtroom. And I completely agree with that. This would be a fucking circus had they cameras in the courtroom. Secondly, his lawyers are trying to somehow imply this is related to his bipolar disorder. Maybe that's the case. But if that's the case, that's more of a sentencing mitigation argument than a guilt argument, right? So they may be laying some groundwork down the line for because his lawyer said Ventura testified that Combs was acting strangely earlier that night at dinner, nice but strangely, and that he wasn't in his right mind. Combs' attorney asked Ventura to confirm whether she told prosecutors that his behavior that night could be attributed to his bipolar. And she says, I guess so. I don't know that moves the ball down the field at all, to be quite frank with you. She's not a doctor, and it doesn't absolve him of any responsibility. So their defense attorney, Anna Estovia, also brings up text from 2018. This is around when this happened. Hit me up when you can with a heart emoji, she texts to Combs. And during the same conversation, Combs Ventura, I know I look bad to you. I could tell you I didn't turn on you yesterday. I fell off, whatever the fuck that means. And this is right around the time that we were watching that tape, right? And she says, you don't say anything to the effect the last time we saw each other where that you raped me. But I mean, the defense lawyer doesn't really have much to really go on here. That doesn't sound like you're going to go after her. So you never told him in that text message that you raped me, did you? And she says, right, I didn't say that. And in fact, you're saying you want to keep the peace. Well, right. Why is that? Guess what they say on cross-exam or redirect. So you have the direct examination, that's the prosecutors asking questions, and the cross-examination. So after that, well, why didn't you say that? Because I was afraid of him. If I gave off to him, like if I started telling him, you raped me, and he would beat me again. I'm not a rag doll. I tried to tell him that before, and I got a beating after that. I'm going to say she didn't say that. But that's really what the danger of doing that is. So now she's married with 2 kids. And they're going on and on about when you were having sex, did you get a FaceTime call from somebody, her now boyfriend, or now husband, rather. If this is going to play out the way I think it is, the government has a slam dunk case, I think. And he's in a lot of trouble. His guidelines are life, 30 to life. On a case like this, when you have this pervasive, long-term torture, really, and just for the sheer pleasure of somebody who's so sadistic and sociopathic that they just want to watch somebody suffer. And I think I said sociopath, which sociopath is really when you don't, it just doesn't affect you, and you don't really give a shit. But Schadenfreude is really what I meant to say, is when you're really enjoying the suffering at somebody else's hand. If that brings you enjoyment to watch somebody suffer. And that seems like what was going on with Combs. He had these freak-offs, and he admits to having these freak-offs. You can have them. You can have freak-offs. They're not illegal. But it is illegal to pay somebody to have sex with another person. That's prostitution. That's illegal. And it becomes federal if you have them come in from Philadelphia to New York, and that becomes, transportation for the purpose of a sex act. That's commercial sex trafficking. And then it becomes even worse when you have a pattern of this activity, which we have that because we have more than one, and we have this non-consensual pattern of activity. So that's the whole RICO, that's the whole sex trafficking, that's the transportation across state lines. Those are the 3 charges that he's dealing with. This case will probably be wrapped up next week, I'm guessing. Federal court goes a lot quicker than state court. Remember the OJ case that lasted like 6 or more months. It was insane how long that lasted. Never would happen in federal court, ever. Federal court would tell you, you got 3 weeks to try this case. See you later. I'm in one right now. I'm in a federal RICO case right now. I make light of Diddy, but I don't want to make light of what he's being accused of. I just don't trust anymore. That last shot put the nail in the coffin. You took care of me materialistically, not when I needed it, only when I needed you to love me and put me first. And you still don't hate him. No, I don't. When you love somebody, you kind of give them a rope, and you let them get away with a lot of things, because you don't want to end the relationship because you love that person. But sometimes you just have to say, see you later. I'm not putting up with this shit any fucking more. A lot of times people will hold something over the other person. And it works for a long time until the person's just had enough of it. And I think that's what happened here with Cassie. He did this to so many fucking people. And for him, it was working. But at some point, people just say, enough's enough. Oh, and there's other news out, I guess. Justin Bieber came up with a statement. I'm not one of his victims. So that's good news, I guess. It wasn't unknown whether or not Bieber had any kind of whatever kind of dealings with the Tootsie Roll or not. You know what I mean by the Tootsie Roll, right? That's what his nickname for his wiener is, because it's about the size of a Tootsie Roll. If the defense has a bunch of other witnesses that can say, nope, I saw her there and she was enjoying it and she never protested. In fact, she got paid to be there, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, here's the thing. He could win one or more of these counts. He's not going to win if he's having freak-offs and hiring somebody from another state, whether it's consensual or not. That's transportation across state lines for the purpose of a commercial sex act. That is count 3. I think that's a slam fucking dunk. The guidelines for that aren't quite as high. But the racketeering and the sex trafficking counts, those guidelines are through the roof. And unless they have somebody that can really speak to all these different elements, I don't know how Diddy doesn't testify. I mean, how do you just let one narrative carry the day? Because it ain't enough just to cross-examine somebody and say, are you sure you're telling the truth? Look at this indictment. It's like, how many pages is it? 14-page indictment. One person. Racketeering with one person. Where are the other people? Where are the other co-conspirators? They're cooperators. That's who they are. And, and guess what? Then you have to cross-examine a snitch. Now, how do you cross-examine a snitch? You have to just totally call into question their credibility. And so the defense then becomes, everybody's lying. You got to believe me. It's best when you have a defense where you have no dispute as to the facts. It's just, what does it mean legally? But here, the one big issue we have is whether it was consensual or not. And maybe sometimes it was consensual, but it only takes one time where it wasn't for them to get a conviction. So, all right, now let's just take care of some business real quick. So sometimes I drink a Diet Coke, as you kind of know. And this Leslie Pigeon, I can't remember where she's from Dallas, Texas, I guess. Leslie, thank you for the Coke can and the T-shirt and the hat and the metal straws. I appreciate it, you guys. So I get stuff all the time, and I really appreciate it. I really do. We have the most loyal fans on this channel, and I want you all to know that I just got a card in the mail today, expressing condolences about Michael. We can stop doing that anytime soon. I took some of his pictures down in my living room because I just, I go play the piano. I play a little piano, not much. I'm a hack. I'm a complete hack. But I look on the wall and his picture's there, and I just had to put something else up. It just, it's tough. It's just tough to when you lose a child. But I do appreciate all the heartfelt cards and everything, and you guys are just amazing. So, and I'm supported. I got family. I've got a fiance. She's amazing, and I think we're gonna get married in August. I think. You guys want to come? Anyway, but I appreciate you guys so much, and we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon. Go to CLRBruceRivers.com and get some merch. We're always putting new stuff up. I think we got a little visor, a Stop Self Snitching visor. See you next time on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away.